Good afternoon, and welcome everyone here to First Unitarian Church. We gather on this autumn afternoon to remember and to honor the life of Karen Kovich. Karen was wife and mother, teacher and music maker, friend and fellow traveler. We remember her beautiful smile, her way of bringing people together, her kindness to those around her. We remember her for her humility, for her grace, for her love. Karen died on August the 12th at the age of 78. May the bonds of love and compassion, the bonds of creativity and joy, the bonds of sorrow and loss unite us now as we gather to remember her. Let's sing together, friends, Blue Boat Home. I'd invite you to rise in body and in spirit. A reading from poet Billy Collins, probably a reading that Karen first heard on Mother's Day here at this church, whenever it was, but it became one of her favorites. It's entitled The Lanyard. The other day I was ricocheting slowly off the blue walls of this room, moving as if underwater from typewriter to piano, from bookshelf to an envelope lying on the floor, when I found myself in the L section of the dictionary, where my eyes fell upon the word lanyard. No cookie nibbled by a French novelist could send one into the past more suddenly, a past where I sat at a workbench at a camp by a deep Adirondack lake, learning how to braid long, thin plastic strips into a lanyard, a gift for my mother. I had never seen anyone use a lanyard or wear one, if that's what you did with them. But that did not keep me from crossing strand over strand again and again until I had made a boxy red and white lanyard for my mother. She gave me life and milk from her breasts, and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me in many a sick room, lifted spoons of medicine to my lips, laid cold face cloths on my forehead, and then led me out into the airy light and taught me to walk and swim. And I, in turn, presented her with a lanyard. Here are thousands of meals, she said, and here is clothing and a good education. And here is your lanyard, I replied, which I made with a little help from a counselor. Here is a breathing body and a beating heart, strong legs, bones and teeth, and 2 clear eyes to read the world, she whispered. And here, I said, is the lanyard I made at camp. And here, I wish to say to her now, is a smaller gift, not the worn truth that you can never repay your mother, but the ruthful admission that when she took the 2-tone lanyard from my hand, I was as sure as a boy could be that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even. Matt's going to offer an interlude now.
There are many joys that we shared over the years. Family gatherings, good food, cooking, baking, travel, languages, the outdoors. You saw a lot of those on those beautiful slides in the beginning. But Karen's love of music is probably the thing that bonded us the most. I have such happy memories of family gatherings where we would entertain the family with music, including duets with me or my grandmother at the piano, Karen at the cello, playing Beethoven, bowling, Broadway, and whatever else we could find, which of course immediately endeared her to my lifelong piano-playing grandmother and the rest of our music-loving family. I imagine most of you have also shared the joy of music with Karen in one way or another at some point. And her memory will live on for me in many ways, but most especially through music, be it listening to a recording of one of the many Broadway shows that we saw together, attending a concert, or listening to her favorite program in all classical radio, The Score with Edmund Stone. So I thought it was most fitting to pay tribute to Karen through a piece at the piano that I'd like to play. It's Traumerei from Robert Schumann's Scenes from Childhood.
Karen Dickey was born on September the 17th, 1944 in Long Beach, California. She was the oldest of 3 children born to Eloise and Bill Dickey. Her siblings, Kathy and Dave, would follow her in the family. The family, I'm told, was close. Karen's father was a TWA pilot, and they had an especially close bond. And in particular, the family loved water sports, whether it was time sailing or water skiing or rowing boats. From an early age, Karen loved school, and she was popular. In fact, she was the prom queen of her high school class. She went to Redlands University, where she played in the orchestra and where she majored in Spanish and minored in German. It was her goal to become a model teacher. Her son Eric was born in 1973, and in this chapter, Karen settled into life as a single parent and as a full-time teacher. She taught elementary Spanish, and she would say that 5th graders were especially her favorites. And music was always important as well. For many years, she played in the Long Beach Symphony Orchestra. Karen met Dave Kovich in 1991 when they were both teaching. Dave was a middle school science teacher, and their new family included Eric and Dave's 3 sons, and from the beginning, everybody got along. Karen and Dave were married in 1992. The legal ceremony was at a local courthouse, but the real exchange of vows happened in Idlewild in the San Jacinto Mountains above Palm Springs. Soon, Karen and Dave made their way to Stockton, California, and where they came to teach at the Lodi School District. In these years, they came to build community there in Stockton. Karen played with the Stockton Symphony. She came to be known for the parties she would put on and the way she went above and beyond when it came to carrying out any particular party theme. It was a good chapter for Karen and Dave. When it came time to explore places to retire, Karen and Dave considered a number of options and decided to move here to the Pacific Northwest, to Oregon. That put them closer to Dave's family in Tacoma, Washington. And they quickly came to love Portland for its art scene and its food scene. And they also discovered this church and quickly got very involved. It gave Karen a chance to continue her music, playing for music and worship services here. She and Holly Stern became part of a piano trio. In retirement, Karen reconnected with some of those former students and learned just how much of an impact she had had on them. Those connections seemed to affirm that early goal that she wanted to be a model teacher. Over the years, Karen started to experience increasing memory loss. She received a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment 6 or 7 years ago. And some of the things she loved, most of all playing music, became more and more difficult for her. In 2021, Karen moved into Brookside Care Facility, which was a good choice for her. Dave called that a phenomenal decision and choice. With Dave not having to carry on all of that caretaking role, it allowed him to, as he said, become her spouse again, and not only her caretaker. In Dave's words, their love blossomed in this chapter, and he felt a blessing to have this time, these last years, with Karen. Karen died on August the 12th at the age of 78. And so it's been a few months since Karen died, and hopefully we've had a little time to see her life in some perspective. Let us remember Karen for her smile, for her kindness, for her beauty. Let us remember her too for her humility and her generosity of spirit, for her gifts of music and teaching that she shared with so many, for her way of simply bringing people together, whether it was one of those well-planned parties or in a classroom. Let us remember her for all the ways she blessed our lives. We're going to have some time for sharing of remembrances now. We'll begin with Karen's son, Eric. Eric.
I've been really thankful for these last few months. Time just to reflect and just to remember what a wonderful person she was. And of course, she was my mom. Every mother is wonderful. But the more I reflected and continue to reflect, the more I really recognized the true blessing that God gave us to know her. And she's definitely a gift that's out of this world. She was full of so much passion, and everything in her life she did was just out of love. It's absolutely amazing. Her joy for music. Like Reverend Tom mentioned, her desire just to be the greatest teacher. And, I'm so thankful that and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but just to be an only child growing up with a single parent, I had so many precious hours. And one of the things that has really dawned on me is just the power of honesty. And I'm so thankful that she was always open and she was always vulnerable. I learned so much from that. And, because of that, I'm always thankful, how open I feel in sharing. And I just got that all from my mom. And so, as you have heard, she was a teacher, but she was always just the consummate mother and teacher. She never missed a moment to teach. I remember standing in the line at grocery stores, and, she was polite about it, but, she would make comments about things that she saw, whether it was on magazine articles or other people standing in line. And every time we went anywhere and she valued someone, she always made sure to make sure I understood that. Even she had a joy for gardening. I remember going to the local nursery one time, and she kept telling me how wonderful the person was who assisted us, and just all these amazing lessons. She would never let a moment pass by. So I'm very thankful for that. And, I just remember when I left for college, more than anything else I learned that first year in school, I really learned just truly how intelligent she was. That reflection, being away from living with her, I was like, damn, my mom is really smart. I recognized at that moment everything she'd ever taught me was incredibly valuable and had a lot of thought and reflection. But again, it all just came from her love. She had, so I'll begin with this. So after we were up here in August spending time with her, when I returned home, somewhere in the depths of my mind, this quote from Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem Ulysses just popped. And the quote was, "To strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield." And to me, that was a perfect expression of my mom. She was always striving to improve herself and her life and the people around her. And she never yielded. And this is what made her such an amazing musician, teacher, and just person overall. And I know I frustrated her a lot growing up because I never wanted to practice piano or violin or trumpet, but she wouldn't yield. And so, even when I was in kindergarten, every day I had to practice 30 minutes on piano. And then third grade, I started violin every day, 30 minutes. Then I told her I wanted to play trumpet, and she said, well, you can't play unless you commit to it. Then I remember one day, she came home from teaching, and she walked into the house, and I was already practicing by myself. And I just saw that beam of joy come from within her, where she knew, like, it finally clicked. I finally got what she'd been trying to teach me those previous 10 years. And so, just so many moments. But two things that really, two memories that keep recurring in my mind, just about just the loving teacher she was. Music was always such a central part of her life. No matter what else she was doing, music was always involved. But every summer, she would teach at the Arrow Bear Music Camp in the local Southern California mountains. And so we'd spend several weeks or a month up there. And, as this little kid, I loved it because I could just run around the mountains and listen to, these musical people playing. And so, it was the best of all worlds, growing up in the mountains and listening to music. The first year, I was actually a camper there myself. I'd been going there for probably, 6 or 8 years just as a kid. And so I felt like it was my home away from home. So, of course, I had full reign. I was king of this camp. And so some of the friends I'd made, we all decided to play a prank. And there was a bell in front of the cafeteria. And so we got up before Reveille that morning. We had planned it, so it wasn't that morning. But we also knew that they kept the timpani out. And they didn't put, they put all the other instruments away, but they kept timpani out. And so my friends and I found a pair of drumsticks and started banging on the timpani, and one of us started ringing the bell at like 5 a.m. And then we ran away back to our little cabin to hide. And, the camp was all in a ruckus. Who would dare wake up and, ring the bell and play the timpani? And later that day, the director of the camp, brought us all together and made sure he told us how inappropriate that was. And then that was it. We just went back and learned music and played concerts. And then I remember the drive home. And as I'm sure you're all aware, we don't get much past our parents, right? But she was so loving. So I knew on the drive home, I can't leave out this part of the story. So we never confessed at camp, and no one ever asked us who did it. So it just went unsaid. But on the drive home, I knew that she knew I was one of those responsible culprits. But she never confronted me with it. She was always very loving and gentle and graceful. But she made sure she took her time to explain how wrong it was. How inappropriate and disrespectful, but again, just the most gentle, loving way she could. And, inward, I felt absolutely horrible. And I think I finally admitted it to her probably 25 years later. And I believe she remembered, because she has a great memory, but she never, acknowledged that she knew it was me, and she never wanted to make me feel bad. She just wanted to make sure I learned the lesson. And she always did that. Again, just her loving, open character. She always had those hard conversations as parents do. That she made sure the purpose was so I would learn, not to make me feel bad or put me in my place. And then the other memory that just kept popping out, so this was, let's see, later I just bought my home, and it was right before, it was like pretty funny, but kind of the worst timing. So it was when, a week before my cousin Kevin got married. So here's a lesson for you all today. So the kitchen, dining room area of my home is just tile floors. And so to cover up the tile, I bought some rugs. And 2 of the rugs had nothing on top of them. And so it was one night, I totally remember, it was a Monday evening. It was actually Monday evening of Thanksgiving week. So here we are, Thanksgiving week. And so I stood up from the table. I was just going to go brush my teeth, get ready for bed. And I took a step on the rug, and the rug slipped out from underneath me. And so I had a glass of water in one hand and the TV remote control in the other. So how dare I break the glass of water, the TV remote control? So instead, I just fell straight forward until I cracked my head, and I wiped up at least the blood on my face, and I was like, all right, I got to go to bed. And then a few hours later, it wasn't a few hours, so just an hour later, I woke up and I knew the swelling had gotten worse, so I drove myself to the emergency room. And while I was in the emergency room that night, both my eyes swelled shut and I couldn't see. So then the next morning when I got back home, I called my mom just to let her know what had happened. And she had already planned to come down Thanksgiving, be with our family that week. And she immediately changed her ticket and came down that morning. And the first thing she did was to clean up the blood that had remained on the floor. And then, she went to the store and bought me food, but she just spent 2 days just loving and caring for me. And so just the sacrifice she made to give up those 2 days and come down early. And then, I remember, just the confidence she gave me of going to the wedding just with my head covered in bandages. So here, I'm this walking mummy at the wedding. But my favorite part of that week was then, she went to church with me that weekend, and I had a Bible verse on the table, and it was from Matthew, and it said, "The greatest shall be your servant." And she just really epitomized that to me that week, just serving me no matter my, whatever condition I was in. And so after church that Sunday, we had this great conversation, and she said it's exactly what she believed, that we need to be the servant. She was open again, and she said how much she missed just serving God and loving others. And so it was this great moment that we really shared. So that just gave me the confidence that, that was a purpose I needed to do and continue my life, just serving God and loving others. And no matter what my physical conditions are, putting those aside and putting others first. And so she absolutely taught, and it really dawned on me that that's what she'd always been teaching me my whole life. Just really loving others, putting them before ourselves. So just so thankful for that, for all of her teaching, really seeing how she used the passions of her life. And that was after really I saw that, her love me in that way. All these reflections since, she was never fulfilled unless she could share her passions with other people. And so other than music, I'd say even more than music, just the relationships she had with people were probably the highest priority in her life. Every time she moved, she'd always talk about the people she missed first of all. It was, just those relationships again, her love for others, and then she'd talk about the new people she'd met, and I've heard, because I've grown up my whole life around music, and I've heard a lot of people criticize musicians, saying musicians are actually selfish. They spend all this time practicing, they just play for themselves. But every single time I always saw my mom was never fulfilled until she had performed for others. She had shared that, the musical expression with others. And just the relationship she had with others. These are always her closest relationships. Those special bonds that we all get to create with people that we have those really, intimate moments with. And for her, that was always music. I'm just really thankful, for her life here, and all that, she shared. And she always made the most of life. She was never willing to settle at all. And so I'm just absolutely blessed to have been able to be raised by her, and to have all these wonderful memories that I will always continue to reflect, and just, do my best to make the world a better place because of all that she taught me. So I know a lot of you know all those things too, but I think they're really great reminders. And as she was a teacher, I hope we could all learn from all those things. So I think that's all I wanted to really express. But I would like to just close in prayer, so if you would bow your heads with me. So, dear God, I just thank you so much for the gift of my mother, Karen. I just thank you for the love and passion you gave her, and the commitment to just excel in everything that she did, to love others, and to really make life be glorified and make life be a blessing. And just pray that we can all make the most of everything that you provide, God, and that we can really love others and never overlook the value of all the opportunities and people that you put in our life. So I just thank you for my mom and just the amazing blessing that she is. Amen. Thank you.
My name is Barbara Morrison, and better. I'm a member of this church, and it's where I met Karen about 12 years ago. She was a member of the Alliance, a large group within the church that meets monthly, brings in speakers, and shares lunch together. Karen was deeply involved in the Alliance, a member of the leadership team, and in charge of planning the luncheons. Karen was kind and welcoming and put me right to work, and we quickly became friends. When you are young and in school, it is easy to make a strong friendship since you see each other every day. But at this stage, it takes some intentionality. And Karen showed that early on in our friendship when she came to my mother's memorial service. It made a huge impression on me. She just brought calm to a stressful day. So when she asked me to come to one of her concerts, I went. I attended as many concerts as I could because it was a win-win for me. I enjoyed the music, and I knew it made her happy. When we were together, we rarely talked about our past or the future. We stayed in the moment, just enjoying the day. At one point, Karen started talking about something being wrong with her health, and we spent a number of lunches trying to figure out what could be causing her symptoms. I can still see her on that day when she told me the doctor said she had dementia. But, as she said, at least she now knew what was wrong. And after that, we kind of lost contact. And at church, I heard that she had entered in memory care. Then last winter, Dave asked me if I would like to go visit Karen. He cautioned me that she could no longer speak or walk, but honestly, I didn't care. I just wanted to see her. I was so excited that she remembered me. Once said my name and thanked me. I'm sure it took a lot of determination for her to say those things, those words. And at first, when I would visit her, the time seemed to drag. I didn't know what to say. But quickly that went away, and I always looked forward to seeing her. We would hold hands, and I would talk to her, play some music that I thought she would like. About a month before she died, when I came to visit, Dave was in her room with her. He was feeding her some cantaloupe. And Karen looked really alert and seemed to enjoy the three of us being there. It almost felt like she was part of the conversation. You could see that she wanted to be. And at one point I looked at Karen and she was staring at Dave with absolute adoration, enough so that it even overwhelmed him and he had to put his head down for a moment. It was a true representation of what Dave called their deep love for each other. The last time I saw her, she was in her chair, and she was resting her head on her arm, but I couldn't see her face. I didn't want to move her, but I wanted to see her face. So I got down on my knees and looked up at her. Amazingly, she looked right at me with a huge smile, and it was like we shared one last laugh together, as I'm sure I looked pretty silly. Karen was simply a wonderful human being. It was an honor to be her friend.
I miss my dear friend Karen. I met Karen and Dave. I think they were newly in town, and I was newly getting involved in the church, and along with my partner Ted, we were at a retreat at Manuka, and we seemed to connect right then, and that continued so that Ted and I and Dave and Karen signed the membership book on the same day. We planned it so we could do that together. Karen was a wonderful connector, and a lot of the richness of my life here in the church is because of her. She invited me into things, and it wasn't all church things, but she kept telling me about the Alliance, but I was teaching yoga on Wednesdays at noon, and 3 Wednesdays a month, every Wednesday except the first Wednesday, I had a good group. And on Alliance Wednesday, almost nobody came because they were at Alliance. She invited me into a poetry group that included people from the church and other people as well, and that added so much richness. Every month, someone would choose a poet, and we would all read up on that poet and share, and it just got deeper and deeper how important that was. She invited me to, what else? She came to my yoga class too, not just at the church, but at my home. And she invited me to her concerts. I got to be the audience and really enjoy her playing. Just thing after thing that are core to my enjoying life here in Portland and at the church are rooted in my relationship with Karen. And so I will remember all those things and carry her always.
I've gotten to the age where I seem to be attending a lot of memorial services, and it's always so interesting to celebrate someone's life and to hear about them from family members, colleagues, and friends who knew them in different roles or at another stage in their life. And I knew Karen as a friend. Karen and I met when we were both fairly new to Portland, and we joined the Unitarian Choir many years ago. The director had seated us next to each other in the second soprano section, even though both of us had previously sung first alto in other choirs. After singing one anthem too many that went up into the soprano stratosphere, Karen defected right back to the alto section. But we still remained friends. As you've heard, Karen was a great organizer, and she loved getting people together. She decided to gather together some of her first Unitarian women friends from the choir and the Alliance, and she started a women's group. We were women at the end of midlife or in early old age. That is not always the easiest of times to begin making new friends. We were not women who really knew each other well or had a long history together. So we were starting from scratch with Karen as our link. Dave asked if one of us from the group would speak, and so I'm speaking for all of us in that group today. This new group met regularly, and we had a great time getting to know each other. We did all kinds of activities, played games, taking walks and hikes, cooking, attending plays, concerts and movies, potlucks, doing craft projects, exploring Portland area restaurants, visiting the coast, and even once a trip to Hawaii. You may have noticed there was a lot of food involved with it. In actuality, though, what we mostly did was talk. And if you knew Karen, you do know that she was a champion talker. But we also really listened to each other. We shared recipes, books, travel hints, ideas for solving problems, dreams, and beauty tips. Well, actually, we didn't really share beauty tips. But we celebrated our birthdays, retirements, accomplishments, weddings, the births of grandchildren. We supported each other through health issues, worries, disappointments, and so importantly, through the declines and deaths of siblings and parents. We laughed a lot, and we cried. We became friends. And we have Karen to thank for bringing us together. We all know that change is inevitable, and so it was for our group. Several women moved away from the Portland area, making it harder to get together and keep in touch. The COVID years, of course, were challenging, trying to figure out Zoom and finding ways to stay connected out of doors and socially distance. Over time, we had begun to notice that Karen was not quite herself. As her cognitive and physical abilities declined, she was still very determined to participate as much as she was able. Finally, it was time for us to modify our activities to make sure that Karen could be included. Eventually, Karen moved to Brookside Memory Care, and we would visit her there. We would bring picnics and songbooks and craft projects and photographs to share. But then again, the time came when even those activities were too much for Karen, and so we would just sit and talk quietly and share the present moment. We always hoped that she would get some sense that she was loved and appreciated. It was a good visit for us if we were able to share a laugh or receive one of Karen's beautiful smiles. So here we are at Karen's memorial service, celebrating her singular life. Karen was the heart of our women's group, and we are so grateful to Karen for getting us together. We will remember her enthusiasm, her determined spirit, her generosity, her many talents, her sense of humor, her wonderful smile. We will remember her with love as our friend.
There's some people you're just meant to meet. Karen was one of those. It actually began several weeks before we did meet, when I got a call out of the blue from a woman asking if I or anyone in my household needed piano lessons. Well, I'm a professional violinist, so that intrigued me, and I asked her how she had gotten my name. She said, "I'm just calling everybody in the white pages." That was when the white pages were really, and if any of you don't know what the white pages are, see me afterwards. This was too intriguing to pass up, so I suggested we get together for coffee, and over the meanderings of conversation, we discovered that we both went to First Church. Then she told me that she really wanted to play the Shostakovich piano trio, and was I interested? I was. And did I know a cellist? Well, I said I'd think about it. Now, in those days, my husband, Don, and I made it a practice when we went to church to sit next to people we didn't know in case they were new. So in November of 2007, we walked into the sanctuary and sat next to Karen and Dave. It turned out this was their first day at church, and that Karen played the cello. Now, there are cello players and there are cello players, and Shostakovich is not an easy composer. But when Karen gave me her email address, she explained, "It begins with Shasta because I love Shostakovich." I think this is where the theme music from Twilight Zone kicks in, and if you don't know about Twilight Zone, we'll go over that after we talk about the white pages. What followed were a couple of years of musical collaboration among the three of us, stage name the Serendipity Trio. We explored a lot of really interesting and challenging repertoire and became good friends, celebrating each other's birthdays and socializing in between. In the process, I got to know this vivacious, creative, fun-loving person named Karen Kovich, always ready to embrace new adventures, make new traditions, and embrace the new life she and Dave were establishing in Portland. And yet she maintained her groups of friends in Stockton and visited them often. Karen's warmth was infectious from the beginning, and though I'd only just met her, I knew from that very first day I was in for something remarkable.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you, everyone. We have just a little bit of time for a couple additional remembrances, so I invite you to come and offer a brief remembrance, and anybody from the choir, you can speak from here. Would someone like to speak? Please.
Sorry, I'm emotional, but I am Karen's sister, and my name is Kathy. And she was 16 months older than me, so my whole life I've kind of just followed behind. But she was always just loving and, brought me into her circle, or I got to attend all of her concerts and all those things. So I'm very, very thankful for having a sister like her. And I just praise God so much for the great person she was, for the time that we had. Look at this great family right here. So I just wanted to tell you that it was just special to follow her through life, 1 year apart in school. And I have some memories that, are just priceless. 1 year, our dad was a TWA pilot, one of the first for TWA way back in the day. And we got to go to, Karen and I spent a whole semester away from school traveling in Europe together. Just amazing, the experiences that we had together. But anyway, I'm just thankful for her and the time that I got to grow up with her and just follow her through life. She is and was a great gift to me. Love you guys.
Anyone else? Thank you all. Next, we'll have a special piece from our choir. A reading from Scripture from 1 Corinthians. If I can speak the languages of people and even of angels, but have not love, I become no more than blaring brass or crashing cymbal. If I am inspired to prophecy and know all the secret truths and hold in my mind all human knowledge, and if I have such absolute faith that I can move hills from their place, but if I have not love, I amount to nothing at all. Even if I give away everything I own and give myself up, but do it in pride, not love, it does me no good. This love of which I speak is slow to lose patience, is kind, and looks for a way of being constructive. It is not possessive. It is neither anxious to impress, nor does it cherish inflated ideas of its own importance. Love has good manners and does not pursue selfish advantage. It makes no parade. It is not touchy, not resentful. Love is never glad when others go wrong. It is not happy over injustice. On the contrary, it is glad with all good people when truth prevails, always slow to expose, eager to believe the best, always hopeful. Love knows no limit to its endurance, no end to its trust. It is, in fact, the one thing that still stands when all else has fallen.
I'm going to try. To begin with, I want to thank all of you who are here this afternoon, in person or online, to celebrate the life of this beautiful and amazing woman. Although we had our fair share of ups and downs, our 30-plus years together were filled with wonderful memories and adventures. But what I want to reflect on briefly now are the last 20 months we had together. The time that Karen was in memory care, because something extraordinary happened during that time. The decision to put Karen into memory care was the hardest decision I've ever made. And watching her go through what she was going through was exceedingly difficult, to say the very least. But I was extremely fortunate to have discovered Brookside Memory Care, due in large part to its loving, caring, and competent staff, as well as its welcoming environment. I was able to go from being Karen's full-time caregiver to being her full-time, loving spouse and companion again. During that time, our love for each other deepened and expanded beyond anything I have ever experienced. My heart cracked open. I truly experienced the limitless, transforming potential of love that Paul so eloquently expressed in his first letter to the church in Corinth. The night before Karen died was clear and mild, and I was out with my telescope and camera collecting data from a small patch of sky, not knowing what the following day was to bring. Later, after processing that data I collected that night, I came up with this image. Now, I know the science behind it, but in my mind's eye, I can imagine this nebula being launched into the heavens, leaving behind in its wake a faint trail of dark nebulosity. And you can kind of see it if you look closely. At the center of this nebula is a brilliant star whose energy is lighting up the gas surrounding it like electricity lighting up a neon sign. Like Karen's smile lighting up an entire room. Although this nebula is traditionally called the Cocoon Nebula, it will forever be, for me, the Karen Nebula. And that brought to mind this passage from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's classic fable of the Little Prince. He writes, "In one of those stars I shall be living. In one of them I shall be laughing when you look at the sky at night. And when your sorrow is comforted, time soothes all sorrows, you will be content that you have known me. You will always be my friend. I shall not leave you." And so, Karen, we're here today to say goodbye. But you know, our love will not ever fade away. The Unitunes would now like to serenade you out.
Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. I hate to leave you, but I really must say good night, sweetheart. Good night. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. I hate to leave you, but I really must say good night, sweetheart. Good night. Well, just can't treat you. Don't mean maybe, because I love you so. Good night, sweetheart. night, sweetheart. Good night.
There's a reception through this door and this way.